Alright, welcome to Estimating Mixed Numbers, and we're going to talk about how to take a mixed number and round it in a way that you can come up with a really quick and easy way to subtract two mixed numbers using that estimation to give you an idea of perhaps different amounts you might have. So in order to do that, you need to have some pretty good number sense about where numbers fall and if they're more than half or less, because very much like a whole number, our rule of rounding for mixed numbers, we're going to need to figure out if our fraction is half or more, we're going to raise the score, which means we're going to round up on our mixed number. Okay? However, if our fractional piece is less than half, then that mixed number is going to stay the same. Okay, so I'm going to show you some different ways that you can kind of look at those fractional pieces. So let's start with our first fractional piece, 7 4/5. So I'm looking at 7 4/5, and I need to determine, is this whole number 7 going to stay 7, or will it round up to 8? That's my only option. It stays 7, or it rounds up to 8. So in order to do that, that's where I look at that fractional piece, because that fractional piece will determine if it is more than halfway to the number 8. So, looking at my 0, half, and 1 here, where would 4/5 fall? So here's where I'm going to show you sort of the three different ways you can do this. The quickest way I found is I look at the denominator, which in this case is 5, and I always just automatically, what's the halfway point? Well, the halfway point is 2.5. Okay? Half of 5 is 2.5. So my numerator is 4. Oh, well, 4 is more than that, right? It's more than the halfway point. So right away, I know it's half or more, which, like I said before, means I'm going to round that 7 to an 8. Okay? Now, if you're not as good with your halves, especially with odd numbers, it gets not as easy, I should say, you can also create a model. Okay? As neat and even as you can get it. I have 4/5 of it. Halfway would be about there. So is that more than half? Sure is. So I know that I would round up. And then the last way, using my 0, half, and 1 number line, is to plot actually 5 on a number line. So 5/5 we know is 1. We've already determined that the halfway point is 2.5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 4 is over here. So that is in the more than half section. So I know I round up. So that's 3 different ways you can do it. Number lines and modeling are a good visual, and you might need that at first, but I'd hope that you would graduate into more of just thinking of the numbers and using your number sense. What's half of my denominator? Is my numerator more than half of that? So let's look at another example. 4 2/3. Okay? So right away, what's half of 3? Well, if I have 3 cookies and I'm cutting them in half, I know I'm not going to have an even amount. It's an odd number. I'm going to have 1.5 cookies. Go back to your numerator. Is that more than my halfway point? Yes, it is. So if my fractional piece is more than halfway, what will that do to my whole number? Will it stay the same, or will I raise the score? Half or more, we raise the score. So 4 2/3 would round to 5. Let's look at another example. Let's do 1 4/10. All right, right away, my denominator's 10. What's half of that? 5. So look to your numerator. Is that more than my halfway point? No, it's less. So if my fractional piece is less than half, what does that tell me to do to my whole number? I hope you said stays the same, because you'd be correct. All right, let's try some of these on your own. I hope you have a paper and pencil ready, because I'm going to put some on our video here. Pause it, you solve them, and you tell me how you rounded them. All right, pause the video. Round these mixed numbers for me into whole numbers. You should have paused it. Did you pause it? Did you do it on your own? Are you sure? Make sure you pause it. All right, welcome back. So hopefully you paused it. You solved all 4 of these problems together. So looking at my first fractional piece, 4/5. Half of 5, we've mentioned it before, is 2.5. My numerator is 4. That's more. So this fractional piece will round that 9 to a 10. My answer is 10. 2 1/5. We just said half of 5 is 2.5. Looking at my numerator, is that more than half? Ooh, it is not. So my fractional piece is not more than half. So what does that mean for my 2? It means it's going to stay the same. Down here to 6 2/4. Half of 4 is 2. Hey, I have 2. 2 is half. So I'm very curious to know if you remembered half or more, we're going to raise the score. This is half. So that means the 6 would round to 7. Good job. Hope you got that one. And lastly, 2/8. Half of 8 is 4. Let's look at my numerator. I only have 2. Do I have half? I do not. I have less. So what that means is my fraction is less than half. So that means my mixed number is going to stay the same. All right, so we left off doing some rounding of some mixed numbers. So now let's take that knowledge of rounding our mixed numbers and let us estimate and then subtract. All right, so let's say I have 6 8/12, and I want to subtract 1 5/8, but I don't want to find the exact answer. I want to find an estimate. So I'm going to use that knowledge of rounding using my fractional parts to help me. So 8/12, how is that going to affect the 6? Is it going to stay 6 or become 7? Well, let's look closer at that fractional piece. So I see that my denominator is 12, which means my halfway point would be 6. 8 is more than that, so that means this fraction is more than half. More than half means I'm going to raise the score on that, so that becomes 7. So over here, 5/8, how is that going to affect my whole number of 1? So looking closer at my fractional piece, I see my denominator is 8. Half of 8 is 4. Well, look at this. My numerator is 5. 5 is more than 4. It's more than half. So more than my halfway point means I'm going to round up. My 1 becomes a 2. Therefore, 7 minus 2 is going to be about 5. So let's take a look at another example. 8 11/16 minus 2 1/4. So looking first here, how is that 11/16 going to affect the 8? Well, looking closer at my fraction, I see that 16, if I cut that in half, would be about 8. My numerator is more than that. It's more than my halfway point. So more than half means I raise the score on that 8 it should become a 9. Let's come over to 2 1/4. 1/4, how is that going to affect my whole number 2? Well, looking at my denominator, half of 4 is 2, but my numerator, it's lower than that. It's lower than the halfway mark of 2. Less than half, that means I'm going to let that whole number rest. So 9 minus 2 is 7. So, hope you still have that pen and paper nearby. And let's try a couple on our own. All right, so let's try 5 7/10 minus 4 2/13. Go ahead and pause the video now once you have that written down. Go ahead and estimate those mixed numbers and see what you come up with. All right, so hopefully you've done your work. The 7/8, how is that going to affect the 5? Well, I know that half of 10 is 5. My numerator is more than that. So my fraction is more than half, which means my 5, I'm going to have to round that up to 6. Now let's come over here. 2/13. 13's an odd number, right? Well, what that means is my halfway point is 6 1/2. Well, look at my numerator. It's only 2. That's way below my halfway mark. So that is not more than half. So that means my mixed number is going to stay the same. So when I think about 6 minus 4, my estimation is 2. All right, grab those pencils. Let's try one more. Why don't we do 7 2/5 minus 4 3/10. Go ahead and write those down. Estimate those beautiful mixed numbers, and let's see how you did when you're done. All right, so how is 2/5 going to affect 7? Well, I've got 5 here. My halfway point is 2 1/2, but look at my numerator. I only have 2. That's less than that. That's less than half. Less than half means my mixed number is going to stay the same. All right, 3/10. I look at that denominator of 10. That halfway point is 5. Oh, again, my numerator's 3. That is less than 5. That's less than my halfway. So less than half means my mixed number is going to stay the same. So my estimation would be 3. Hope that helps. Have a good night, guys.